morning and welcome to Today in the News here on Vanguard Live. As usual, we bring to you newspaper analysis and in-depth review. My name is Ololade Adeomi. Let's get started. A look into the Vanguard newspaper. As a major headline, it says Tinubu gift each Falcons player $100,000 national honors house allocates a three-bedroom apartment. Each technical crew got a $50,000. Explains why he didn't want to watch final match. You can find the story on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Top banner says electricity, Ekiti, Ondo, Edo, others plan tariff review in line with Act. You can find the story on page 16 of the Vanguard newspaper. Our resilience saved Nigerian varsities from total collapse under Buhari, ASUU says. You can find the story on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. Bottom banner says 2027 coalition about Nigeria, not me, will be El-Rufai Amechi, article says. In the middle, it says ASUU unveils initiative to connect Nigerian experts at home, the diaspora. And lastly, over 130 security agents killed in ongoing Castina anti-banditry war. You'll find the story on page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper. Away from the Vanguard, straight into the Punch newspaper. As a major headline on the Punch newspaper, it says Electricity Act Amendment Bill. Federal government may sell 11 discos to new investors. NEC to enforce discos recapitalization, reprivatization. Amendment Bill advances at NAS. Top banner says U.S. birth tourism crackdown sparks Nigerian hospital reforms calls. Bottom banner says nurses strike to each hospitals nationwide Wednesday. Cheating, Ondo girl nabbed for stabbing boyfriend to death. GAC in turmoil as faction moves to sack Lagos APC chairman. Lassa fever, the third toll rises to 152 amid 811 cases. Away from the Punch newspaper, straight into the Guardian newspaper. Major headline on the Guardian newspaper says Pole digital retail offering mar 815 trillion naira stock market potential. Top banner says 4 trillion naira legacy debt threatens poor sector stability. Adelabu warns. In the middle, it says SDP expels El-Rufai, bans him for 30 years. And lastly, it says NMA threatens strike, rules exit of 30 doctors in Jigawa. That's all we have on the front page of our newspapers today. Join us after the break for a quick analysis of some of our top stories. Welcome back. If you're just joining me, it's Today in the News here on Vanguard Live. My name is Ololade Adeomi. Joining me in the studio is Mr. Dayo Akintobi. It's the publisher Ikeja GRA today, Ilupeju today, and Lekki today. Good morning, Mr. Dayo Akintobi.
Good morning, Ololade. Good morning to all our viewers.
Okay, so look into a top story. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu honored Nigerian Super Falcons on July 28, 2025 at a ceremony in Abuja following their dramatic comeback win over Morocco to secure their record extending 10th Women's African Cup of Nations title. The key gestures include conferment of the Officer of the Order of Nigeria (OON) national honor to each of the 24 players and 11-member technical crew, a cash reward equivalent to 100,000 USD in naira per player and 50,000 USD per technical staff member, and an allocation of three-bedroom apartment. What can you say is the significance of Tinubu's gestures coming immediately after Nigerians' 10th WAFCON triumph?
Well, the whole idea of rewarding the team in this way is to show that the country appreciates them, that their efforts will not go unrewarded, especially in the dramatic fashion with which they won. That they came from behind when almost everyone had lost hope already, and they made the nation proud. without a doubt, when such things happen, you want to appreciate the players. You want to let them know that the efforts are appreciated. And you also want to use it to encourage others. Of course, there's the men's team that will play in similar competitions, even all the way to the World Cup. So you can imagine, money is a great motivator. You can imagine that all the others who saw this largesse being bestowed on the lady players will be encouraged that they also should strive. They should strive very hard to try and achieve the same thing, because they will be rewarded similarly. The question, what is raising a bit of a furor, is it deserving of a national award? In the past, we've always seen this type of cash rewards, houses, that kind of thing. But to now confer them with a national honor begs the question of what is the purpose of the national honor to begin with? Who are the people? I mean, there's been quite a bit of complaint in the past that the honor has been trivialized, that has been given to unworthy people. So the question you ask yourself is something like winning a tournament, a football tournament, which essentially, yes, sports is a unifier. It teaches our youth leadership skills. It does quite a lot of things. But at the end of the day, how substantive, what role does sports play in putting food on the table and curing poverty and all of the other things that ail our country? So you look at it and you say, okay, how about all the other people who are contributing to nation building? Teachers, doctors, even entrepreneurs, people who build refineries, people who contribute in various ways to national development and to civic pride. They are not similarly bestowed with national honors. So is it appropriate, that's the question you should ask, that these lady winners should have been given a national honor? And also look at the precedent it sets. If our men now win, you have to confer them as well, otherwise you'll be accused of discrimination. Then what happens when some people go and play basketball and they win? I mean, of course, football is a national passion, like a religion. But what happens to other sporting activities that win? Will we begin just conferring national honors like confetti on everybody who wins a tournament? So that's the issue at hand. But in terms of rewarding the players, that was absolutely the correct thing to do, both to appreciate the efforts and to motivate others who are coming along behind them.
So do you foresee, this setting a precedent of how professional athletes are rewarded? Considered how some of them have complained that they've been treated in the past.
Without a doubt, I mean, it has set a precedent, because you'll be discriminating if you don't give to others. And when you look at Nigeria's history of treating their professional athletes, or those who go and represent the country, you see many of our professionals dying in penury. Most of our previous football players, you don't see them getting any national recognition or support after their careers are over. So this has definitely set a precedent. It has raised the bar for sporting excellence. And nobody who achieves at that level will be satisfied without getting such a similar honor. So, the horse has bolted from the barn on that one, and there's nothing we can do about it beyond the fact that we have to continue giving others, otherwise it will look discriminatory. Whether that's a good thing for the country or not, I can't say.
So what tangible effect might this have, on the visibility, funding, and, the development of women's football in Nigeria as a whole?
Well, it goes to show that the government is serious about promoting sports, whether among women or among both gender. It goes to show that the government is finally giving sports its due, because sports does have its role in our socio-economic life. It like I said, it is a unifier. It helps promote leadership skills. It keeps our youth positively engaged. It helps to promote health and fitness. It has numerous advantages. So without a doubt, what the president has done will be a motivator not just to other sporting people, but will also send a message that this administration is serious about promoting sporting activities. Look, for example, now there's a movement to try and bring Formula One car racing to Nigeria, because the Formula One people have said they want to have a Grand Prix in Africa. Nigeria is one of those who's beating to win that franchise. Rwanda is also bidding. But when they see what the president has done in this instance, they know that this administration is serious about investing in sportsmen and women as well as sports infrastructure. Look, for example, the National Stadium is dilapidated, it's in ruins. That's a magnificent edifice from the 70s that was world class and hosted world standard football. Today lies in ruins and is primarily used for religious conventions. So by this move the federal government has made to recognize and invest in sportsmanship, if they follow it up and continue, we can raise the level of sports in this country in a way that would be positive and that could possibly even bring FDI, foreign direct investment, into the country.
Okay, so away from that, let's take a look into our second story. ASUU claims that the resilience of its members helped keep Nigerian public university system from total collapse during Muhammadu Buhari's administration. According to ASUU, sustained student strikes and funding shortfalls threatened to derail tertiary education, but union effort prevented systemic breakdown. This statement comes amid broader reflections on Buhari's legacy in education. Could you unpack the circumstances as you referred to when it said that resilience saved Nigerians' public university system from collapse?
Yes, if you remember, during the entire 8-year tenure of President Buhari, ASUU and the administration were at loggerheads throughout the entire 8 years, and most of it related to things of funding. There was a move to get ASUU and all the academic staff to move on to this platform called IPIS in terms of their emoluments, and there was resistance from the leadership of ASUU that they had their own platform. They didn't want to go onto this central government platform, and that was pretty much the genesis of the problem during the Buhari administration. But they locked horns several times, and I remember there were several strikes, threats of strike, actual strikes, and throughout the 8-year tenure, without a doubt, ASUU did not back down. Their leadership was voracious. Their leadership was vehement and completely antagonistic to anything that ran counter to its ideology, its ideals. And under the leadership, I think there was Oshodeke, was a Professor Oshodeke, if I remember properly, and he was the one who was in the trenches most of the time, and he didn't suffer fools gladly. What he would do was, if the government made a promise that, okay, we will, at one point government was doing no work, no pay, and they said, well, okay, some of us were still working even during the strike. We were still, even if we weren't going actively lecturing, we were still in the office. We were doing so. They wanted to get paid, and government promised to pay them and didn't pay. So they went back on strike again. So yes, I don't think you can say they were rubber stamp leadership that just caved in each and every time government put a bit of pressure. I think they stood up to government, and I think at the end of the day, they were able to force government to the bargaining table, to the negotiating table, and they ended up reaching compromises that helped keep the tertiary institutions open, helped our youth get educated, and didn't make them lose too much time during the 8 years. Yes, there was some downtime, without a doubt, but it could have been a lot worse if there was more of a puppet type administration in ASUU at that time. So I think that leadership of ASUU at that time did very well to keep the government in discussions and keep the government to keeping its promises to the union.
So, ASUU went on strike cumulatively for over 600 days between 2015 to 2022, including a 9-month strike in 2020 and an 8-month strike in 2022. How disruptive would we say, these strikes were in practical terms now, considering looking at the academic, effects, social effects, and economic effects at large?
that lost time is time you can't gain back. Remember the saying in Nigeria that you know when you enter university, you don't know when you graduate. It's because of these incessant strikes, and sometimes they are interminable and last for ages. So, strikes in and of themselves are disruptive. And my view has always been that it doesn't have to get down to us downing tools before we can discuss. We shouldn't be reactive and start seeking to negotiate after a strike has been called. We should be able to discuss our issues and continue to keep options open and keep discussing without it getting down to a strike, because the negative impact, the impact of a strike is very negative on all parties, particularly the students, because they lose time they can never get back. And during strikes that they are idle, they get up to all kinds of things. As you know, the idle hand is a playground for the devil. And and they get rusty, they forget about how to study and be committed during that downtime. It's just negative all the way around. And when they come back to school, they now have to settle down and get used to having a rigid schedule all over again. So it is not only disruptive, it is a drawback both on the students, on the lecturers themselves, the academic senior staff union themselves, and even society in general, because we have a delay of getting fresh graduates into the workforce. By the time they come in, they may not be sufficiently motivated because they've had their studies drag on and on and on, and they are kind of getting jaded a little bit themselves. So when you look at it, it's always better to find a solution to head off a strike, no matter to what degree you have to negotiate. I mean, in all negotiations, both sides have to give up something. It's not possible for ASUU to get all of its demands. It's not possible for government to get all of its demands. So each side has got to sacrifice something. Each side has got to be willing to compromise and meet somewhere in the middle. And the most successful negotiators recognize that I get everything I'm looking for. And as a result, I have to be willing to sacrifice. And I think this should be the modus operandi in any engagement between ASUU and the government.
So let's take a look into ASUU's strategy as a whole. Would you say there were shortcomings in their strategies at all?
Well, if for it to have gotten to the point of a strike, that in and of itself says there was a shortcoming, because astute negotiators know how to get want without having to go all the way to a zero-sum game where they no. In a strike, there are winners even after the doubt at the end of the strike. So for them to have had to strike to begin with, it goes to show that there was a shortcoming in their negotiating style, because they should have been able to get government bargaining table, negotiating table to where strike would not have been necessary. But when you're dealing with an obdurate, recalcitrant, rigid party that you're negotiating with, sometimes you don't have a choice. You just have to go all the way to the end of the road to get your way, or to force that person to come to the table. So in terms of their strategy, that's what unions are for. Unions are there to fight for the rights of their members. And I think ASUU does well in protecting its members and making sure that they get their due. I think as a union, historically, they've been known to be above board. For example, they have a better reputation than NLC, for example. The NLC of recent, nobody believes in the NLC of recent anymore. Most people believe that the NLC is compromised, that every time they scream about strike, they go have an overnight meeting with government, they come back and say they've settled. So Nigerians don't trust NLC much anymore. But I think ASUU still has a generally good reputation, that people still believe ASUU is an association or a union or a group with integrity, and that they fight for the rights of their members with no compromise.
Okay, so let's take a look into the current administration. ASUU and other unions now demand 15 to 20% of the national budget for education compared to the 4 to 10% under the past administration. What would you say this implementation would look like right now?
Well, what percentage of your overall spending do you want to attribute to education? What importance do we give to education? Is it more important than health? Is it more important than infrastructure? Is it more important? So you just have to balance all these things, because if you give 20% to education, you are shortchanging somewhere else. How about security? If we are insecure and armed robbers, bandits, kidnappers, and all those people are running riots, can anybody go to school? Will anybody be able to even get to the campus, or even be able to stay safe in campus to go to lectures if insecurity is rife? So you have to look at all of it. I don't think you can just arbitrarily pull a number out of the hat and say, oh, we want 20% of the total budget for education. Yes, education needs funding, but so does security, and so does healthcare. If you are sick or you are dead, can you go to university? If you are ill and you have disease and they can't, there's no medicine, not health. So priority over health? Should we give it a priority over security? I don't know. All go to school. If you don't have security, can you go to school? But at the same time, if you don't have education, can you develop? So it's a balancing act. I can't say whether 20% is appropriate, whether it's enough or whether it's too little. I don't know. But all I do know is that you have only 100%, and you have many areas to share it. And almost all areas are equally important. Agriculture, for example, if we can't grow our food, and if we can't provide enough food security, and we can't feed, can we even go to school? Or if we take hungry stomach to the lecture hall, will you be able to concentrate to learn anything if you haven't eaten? So agriculture is important too. I've already talked about security and health. So I don't know about that 20%, if it makes sense. Maybe it is enough. Maybe they need more. Maybe they need less. But you have a pool of sectors that all demand attention and resources. So that is the job of the executive, the administration, to be able to apportion the proper percentages to the various sectors. Anything else is guessing. ASUU has the right to demand any percentage. Why did they stop at 20%? Why did they say 50% of our budget that they want it? Or, so it is a negotiating tactic that by the time we ask for 20% and we start going back and forth, maybe we end up with 5 or 7 or 10. But at the end of the day, we want more than we are currently getting. But I think it's unrealistic to expect to get 20% for education in light of all of the other areas in Nigeria that require attention.
Okay, so considering the past strikes, how should the current Tinubu's administration learn from all of that in order to avoid future crises and future strikes?
It's always have a listening ear and be willing to engage before it gets down to the point of as a bit of give and take on both sides. So no administration should be that rigid. Previous administration was rigid and said, no, you must migrate to iPage. No, we're not listening to your own platform. We don't want you to do it. There are various issues of contention. Oh, we want back pay by 12 months. We want salary increase and pension increase. No administration should be totally rigid and say that it's their way or the highway. And they should be always willing to listen, a listening ear. Every successful negotiation requires each party to listen more than they talk. But in our case, we want to talk more and listen less to the opponent or the opposing party. So let them get a good understanding of what the grievances are. If you are listening, many cases, ASUU want to engage with government, government won't even give them the time of day. They won't say they don't have their time. They are not. I remember the previous Minister of Labour under President Buhari's administration, the previous Minister of Labour, he and ASUU didn't see eye to eye. Many times ASUU would try and approach him and he would be standoffish. He wasn't really willing to engage with them. And I think that is a fault. I think especially in light of the fact that you know that ASUU is formidable. ASUU has the mandate of all of the senior staff members across the country. So they are not anybody you can disdain or disregard. You have to engage with them. So I think this administration would do well to recognize the fact that they need to be open to discussion. They need to listen, pay attention to the needs of the members of that union, and enter into a dialogue, not a monologue. Most governments is a one-way talk. They want to talk, they don't want to listen. And that doesn't lend itself to successful negotiation. So they should be ready to dialogue with the union.
Thank you very much for staying with us. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Dayo Akintobi.
My pleasure always. Thank you for having me.
That was Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher Ikeja GRA today, Lekki today, and Peju today. Thank you very much for staying with us. Remember, you can follow us on all our social media platforms for more engaging stories and on our website at www.vanguardngr.com. My name is Ololade Adeomi. Have a lovely day.